Welcome back. We have been talking to our very distinguished guest today, Professor Dr. Shahidul. He is the chief of DRIC and Pathshala Media Group, runs courses for rather very selective courses for photographers from all over the world. He visits universities, lectures. He is a professor himself, and he used to teach at London University. Dr. Shahidul, you were also on the advisory board of so many organizations like the National Geographic Society, Eugene Smith Memorial Fund, and you are a visiting professor at UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles, and you lecture at Harvard, Stanford, Oxford and Cambridge here in this country, and in at many seats of learning in Africa, Asia, and Australia and Latin America. It must be a very busy life. How do you manage that?
I try and extract as much out of life as I can. I mean,
everybody has 24 hours.
Well, yes, exactly. And I live a charmed life as well. I think, if one were to ask me, what do you do? I go around taking pictures, writing, telling stories, and I actually get paid for doing that. That's pretty special.
That's the best thing.
Isn't it?
If you get paid for traveling. I was talking to a travel writer, and I said, don't you get bored? She said, and I was teaching those, and I said, don't you get bored by teaching? I said, no, I get paid. You have written several books. Some of the books are here with us, and we would like to share it with our viewers. Can you show this on a screen? Yes. This book says, I don't want to be your icon of poverty or a sponge for your guilt. My identity is for me to build in my own image. You are welcome to walk beside me, but don't stand in front to give me a helping hand. You are blocking the sun. That's a very interesting idea. This book about your journey, isn't it? Mm-hmm. My journey as a witness. What did you witness in this book?
A whole range of things. It's a recent account. Primarily, it actually looks
When was this book published?
This was in 2011, and it looks at the photographic movement in Bangladesh through my eyes. And it is fairly remarkable that today Bangladesh is a global role model in the world of photography. The festival that we run is one of the most celebrated in the world.
The Chobi
Mela. The School of Photography is regularly turns out world-class photographers on which one would never imagine from a country like Bangladesh with such great frequency. And certainly relative to what happened before, for sure, but even in absolute terms, the status of photography, status of Bangladesh in the world of photography is right up there.
Great.
And I think the book tries to look at this phenomenal shift that has taken place.
Great. Let's have a look at another book of yours.
That's actually not it's a DRIC publication. The cover picture is mine, but it's written by Ahmed. It's a publication by DRIC. DRIC is a publisher.
Tortured Truths.
Tortured Truths.
By Ahmed.
Yeah, and in fact it was a book that looked at primarily that period leading from the military-backed government that came into power, and the unholy alliances that have taken place since then.
Why is it that in politics people when they talk about alliances, they always say unholy?
Well, politics itself, sadly, has that tinge. Primarily, I think, because while the idea of politics was to do with the principle of governance, it has largely become a principle of profit. So I remember talking to my dad once.
Profit.
Yes, very much. I remember talking to my dad a long time back. Sadly, he's passed away. He was very interested. Professor Mansour, yes, of Mansour's Media. He was very interested in politics, and I'd asked him why he'd never entered politics. And he said, well, you know, if you are to be in politics, then you either need to be very wealthy or have no need for money.
Yeah.
I have a family to run. I need to earn to keep it going. As long as politics has to feed you, you can never do the politics that's really needed.
Honestly.
Yeah. And I think the reality is today that those who enter politics enter it not to serve the country or the people, but for person. Absolutely. And while that is the case, and that's the case the world over, sadly, while that is the case, politics will continue to be unholy.
We'll talk about that on that point a little later, but this book of yours is Chobi Mela. This is this Mela.
It's a biennial festival of photography,
right.
which is probably the most demographically diverse in the world. We have
what time of the year?
The next one is coming up on the 23rd of January, 2015, and you must come over for that if you can. Really, it's something to be savoured.
Well, a two-way ticket would be fine. This is another book, the Birth Pangs of Nation. This is about Bangladesh.
It's about the war of independence of Bangladesh, but it also looks at present-day Bangladesh, the fact that while 10 million refugees were supported by our neighbours at that time, today we are not quite as generous about people who want to take refuge in our own country.
Yes, that is so unfortunate. That brings us to the human rights. You produced a film called Crossfire, and that caused a bit of a problem.
You're being very mild. Yes, I mean, Crossfire, of course, is a euphemism for extrajudicial killings.
Right.
It has been going on ever since it was started it was set up. It's known.
It's by whom?
It's by a group called the Rapid Action Battalion, in short, RAB. And this group was established for the purposes of curbing crime, which people were very happy about. But as soon as you give impunity to people, when people are no longer accountable, it's bound to go wrong. Yeah? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Rapid Action Battalion was in that situation where they've had absolute power, and of course, as a result, the extrajudicial killings went reckless. So we put together a major exhibition in 2010. The show wasn't allowed to open. The government closed the show down illegally. We took the government to court. They had to back down, and we did have the show open for one day. But the show has been phenomenally successful. I mean, it made the front page of New York Times. It was reviewed twice further in the Lens blog. It was on BBC, CNN. It was on the front page of Amnesty's report on Human Rights Watch. It's been talked about at Tate Modern. The work has been shown.
See, now this is the point we were talking about. See, anything normal does not make news. Just because Crossfire annoyed some people.
That is true, but there is another side to it. I think what really made news was the defiance.
Yeah.
The fact that a small organization could stand up to a repressive government.
To Goliath.
Yeah, exactly. And the work has actually been an eye-opener for artists across the world, because it's the strategy that it took on, the fact that it was able to take on a very complex story and present it in a particular manner, the fact that there were public protests all across the country which forced the government to reopen the gallery.
Well, unlike Crossfire, I understand this book of yours did not get a bad press at home.
Well, of course, 71 is something which is very close to us. And while there were aspects of it which the government might not have liked, they did actually buy 150 copies to give to state guests. So I suppose there are times when they like us too.
That's good for you and good for Drick and your good work. you as a human rights worker and rather champion, tell us briefly, what is the human rights situation in Bangladesh today?
It needs to be seen at two levels. I think one needs to recognize that there are some very, very fine people working at a grassroots level, working within civil society, who are doing phenomenal work in terms of upholding the rights of people. On the other hand, there are governments, and I will say this of all governments that we've had, who have been hugely repressive, who have stolen the rights of the people, who've really even taken over our constitutional rights on occasions. Ironically and sadly, these repressive governments have invariably been supported by major international players as well. The Rapid Action Battalion we were talking about have been trained by MI6 and CIA.
But you do have human rights organizations in Bangladesh.
Oh yes, we do. And as I was saying, they play a very important role. Not only that, I mean, you were talking about the Crossfire exhibition. We actually put together a mobile version of the exhibition, which activists have taken and they've hung on clothespins or on trees or on bazaars and set up their own resistance movement at great risk to themselves. And that's also worth remembering. While the transgressions, while the injustices need to be remembered, I think the fact that there are very fine people resisting, playing a very important role, ensuring that the rights of the people are upheld, is also part of the story. Sadly, that story doesn't always get told.
True. How sad. Time is also coming to a closer. Dr. Shahidul, it was a pleasure having you with us, and it was your visit was really one that will I remember for a long, long time. Would you like to say a few words to our viewers and a few words of yours about NTV in UK and Europe?
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Certainly looking at a channel like this is wonderful. I wish more of us knew about it. Certainly one of the things I will be doing is ensuring that not just this program, what you're doing here is highlighted a lot more through our own channels. But I would also like you to come to Bangladesh, to visit a beautiful country. Come during our festival in January. It'll be starting on the 23rd of 2015. And really find out for yourself what this country is about. Do not depend upon the prejudices. Do not depend upon the stereotypes. Discover for yourself one of the most amazing countries there is.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor.
My delight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for being with us. I hope you have enjoyed the show as much as we have. See you again next week. Same time, same channel. Take care.